now I'm going to talk about primary market research. There was a slide that I put in here. Let me go back to that. A really important slide about with Sensible. And I kind of jumped over it and I just explained things. What you will do in your exercises and in your businesses when you go back is build out this matrix and to get things started. And then, as we said, even with industrial design, then you're going to break this out further once you do that and then do a kind of another matrix to go through it to figure out where are you really going to focus. And you're going to do all these other things, persona and the like. But how did we end up with all this stuff? And obviously, I think you all know that we didn't just get this stuff by sitting in our office or just looking on the internet. What we did is we went out and we observed and we talked, and we had the great fortune to be able to sell stuff to people and ask them why they were doing it. And we became very good friends with our customers. And they gave us invaluable information. Basically, all our customers, with one exception, and that was Paul Allen, who was the co-founder of Microsoft, was very willing to share the information with us. And we made that part of our persona, that we were very friendly and we were open about what we did. And they shared with us and we helped them. And they had our home phone numbers. At that time, we had landlines. And they also had mobile phone numbers to get a hold of us, and we would be very responsive to that. Because you really got to put your customers on a pedestal, especially at this early stage. So, but let's just talk more generally, how do you do good primary market research, and how are you going to do that over the next, 24 hours, 48 hours, the rest of this week? Well, first, there's a whole bunch of stuff that in the book that you could go through, but I'm not going to dive heavily into that. I'm just going to tell you it's really important. And I learned this at MIT with my thesis, because when I studied companies that didn't do well, they didn't have a good marketing process. And when I studied companies that did well, they had a good marketing process, often from a Lotus Development Corporation or Parametric Technologies or some other company that they had seen it before. But the ones who did really well didn't just have a good process. They actually did something extra. And they literally, went out and walked in not literally, they walked in their customers' shoes. And the story, what really came on to me was a guy named Richard, who was out on 128. He had a database company. He actually was Australian, ironically. And he said, because I had all these diagrams being an engineer, and I'm like, where is it in this diagram that, what am I missing? What part of this process am I missing? He goes, put down your diagrams for a second and listen to me, Bill. He said, if I was going to write software for the policeman, I would not write a single code until I had watched all the movies, I had read all the books I could, I had talked to all the people I could, and then I had gone out on rounds with policemen for a few weeks and slept the same hours, listened to the same music. He goes, then I could get inside their head, and then I could start to design the product that they want, and I wouldn't write it. And son of a gun, when I looked at that, the people who are really high performing, it wasn't some sort of flow chart. It was all about their empathy, their understanding, the depth of knowledge they had about their customers. And that comes through primary market research. And that's what's going to drive the whole process. And so people, then there's all this, go talk to customers. And that's what someone told me when I was in your school. Go talk to customers. But you need a structure to talk to customers. And it's not just talking to customers. There's a bunch more, and I'm going to talk about that. And what exactly is primary market research? And this is, again, something that's been known by academics and educational institutions. There's secondary market research, which is done by other people. You can buy it, you can look at it, you can read it from other people. Primary market research is stuff you do yourself. You do it yourself. So, well, why is that so important? Why can't I just read what somebody else says? First of all, it just is. But second of all, let me explain to you why that's true. Because if you're leading your life and someone tells you what your life is, that's crazy. You don't outsource your eyes and ears to other people. There's so much that goes on in your life that you see, you hear, you do, you understand at a visceral level that you can't get if somebody else just tries to tell you about it. So that's That's why this is so important. And this is really, your ability to do this will become a huge competitive advantage. One of our groups of our students called Spice Kitchen. I don't know if anyone's heard of Spice Kitchen. You're from Boston. Have you heard of Spice Kitchen? What they did is they built a robot to cook food, right? And have you heard about this? How'd you hear about it? Was it, they talk about? Yeah, it blew up. It was just unbelievable. And so these guys, it was just like people like you sitting in my office, 2 years before, or actually 3 years, and now they're on national, they weigh $21 million from Howard Schultz, from Starbucks. It's just going crazy. And I had them come back and say, tell them, what advice you would give them. Just net it out. What advice would you give them as they're starting our summer accelerator program? And he came in, Michael Farid, and it was really interesting. And he said one thing. He said, do the primary market research for yourself. Don't do it for Trish. Don't do it for Bill. Don't do it for somebody else. Do it for yourself, because that's where the gold is. That's where all your insights will come from. And you'll go back to that over and over again. If you can, record them. Take good notes. Remember who you spoke to. Be able to follow up with those people, because that's where the real insights happen. And I thought that was really good. So primary market research, it's not that you shouldn't do secondary market research, but this is where the real gold is going to be, and this is almost a commodity that you have to do, but it's not going to give you those real insights that you'll get from this. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is they say, primary market research. I am going to go set up a survey and take a survey. That is usually a really bad idea. Why?
You don't know what to ask yet.
That's correct. Your confirmation bias and other biases come in. Do you like this product? You don't know what the problem is. You have to start out qualitatively with them to get the big picture in an unbiased way. What makes a good day for you? What makes a bad day for you? Why is it a bad day? Why is it a good day? You might think that something's important and it's not important to them. Then you shouldn't act like it is. You got to know this stuff up front. If what you offer isn't important to them, can you position it in a way that it will help what they really care about? So the qualitative stuff is the open-ended, not specific yet, where you're talking to them, and then quantitative is when you move to the surveys and you can ask more specific questions and start to get more data. But often, we engineers and we need data, so let's get a survey out there, and you're asking the wrong questions. So the goal of PMR should, first of all, to understand the real problem, not the problem that you perceive, but the real problem. And then even if they say this is a problem, what is the root cause of that problem? I think Erdin did this earlier today. Did he do the exercise with the phone? No. So in my class, we go, we have this, go home and do an idea journal. And then, so they come back with their idea journal and say, all right, now we're going to do problem solving today. And so, but we don't need to worry about everyone's idea journal, because I got a problem that everybody has. And that problem is your battery dies, right? You've never been there and your battery dies on your phone and you hate it. Everybody agrees. And today, the problem we're going to solve is the lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries are at the bottom of this. They don't charge up. They don't last as long. And so all of you are going to break up into groups, and you're going to brainstorm solutions now to what is the answer for the future of lithium-ion batteries. And by the way, do we have chemists in the room? And we split them up and put them into different groups. And they go off, and they come back after 20 minutes. I could give them 45 minutes. They come back with very uninspired solutions or stupid solutions, right? Like, yes, we're going to put a link between this and our shoe, and then we're going to generate energy that comes up through our shoe and comes up, I shouldn't say stupid, but you get what I'm saying. They're not, they're like frustrated. So I say, what was the problem we were solving? And they said, you told us to solve the problem of lithium-ion batteries. I said, well, you're an entrepreneur. You shouldn't just take what people say. You're a pirate. Think about, was that the right question? What is the real problem? Battery does not stay long. No, but thank you for playing.
The inconvenience that it generates.
Yeah, we're getting closer. The inconvenience that it generates. Everybody hear what she said?
Yeah.
Let's build off that. Yes, Ann?
Not being able to use the device.
But why? Don't use your device. That's just, the phone isn't, I don't carry around a phone to use a device. It has to inconvenience me. What does it inconvenience me for?
People can't reach you.
People can't reach you. Yes? I don't know what scalability.
2 a.m., I can't get a bus home, and I can't call anyone.
Yes. I can't connect with other people in when I really, really need to. I cannot get information when I really, really need to, right? This is the problem that we need to solve. And now the problem, by the way, at that point I just say, that's the problem, right? People need to be able to connect. Now go solve that problem. I send them away for half the time. It could be 10 minutes, it could be 15 minutes. They come back with great solutions, a broad, people need to not be so addicted to their phones. We need software that prioritizes for the ones that are important, that aren't important. We need to give reports that people say how much they're using their phones so they don't get addicted to their phones. When we get below a certain level, they get warnings. We need to have people take yoga classes so they're not so addicted to looking at their phones all day. We need to do digital detox classes. The point there is that if we define the problem as lithium-ion batteries, the solutions are really not getting to what the problem is. The problem was, and the job to be done was, people need to be connected. And when they're not connected, that is a real problem. And the behavior that they're using today doesn't support that. They think the solution is just give me more lithium-ion or better lithium-ion batteries. And there are much better solutions. The easy solution would be, let's just have better lithium-ion batteries. But that is very, very expensive, and that's not going to make for a very entrepreneurial company, right? You want to try to find good solutions to real problems with the least amount of cost and resources that you need as quickly as you can. So you're trying to figure out what the real problem is, not just the one that's stated, or not just don't treat the symptom. And it's not for the customer to design the product, although Eric von Hippel, for those you've taken his MOOC, right? He has got a lot of research that shows that you can find users who have the biggest problem that are fixing it through duct tape and other things. Yes, that's true. That is true in a lot of situations. I don't believe it's as true as much as Eric does, but that's a good thing to look. Most of the time, you have to look and understand what's the customer's issue and what problems they're going through, and now you design the solution. You design the solution. Steve Jobs famously said, you don't listen to customers. They'll tell you stupid things. And Henry Ford said, if you ask customers what they wanted a faster horse and buggy. They didn't know about a car, right? Well, if you're studying customers and you understood what they wanted to get from point A to point B in a more reliable way, in a lower cost way, in a faster way, and that is exactly what a car is, right? You don't ask them to define the new product. That's up to you. It's up to you to define the product, but it's up to you to study and understand what the problem is they have. You design the product. Don't ask them to do that. And you're open to surprises as you go through this. If everything comes back, like if students come back and they say, I've done all this primary market research, and it is exactly what I thought it would be. What do you think is going on? That's right, confirmation bias. This is totally confirmation bias. It's I am so smart. See, I told you that this was. Confirmation bias is you believe that things are a certain way, and then you see the world that way. Horoscopes are absolutely correct. I read this horoscope this morning, and it said someone close to you is going to die today. It must be true. Did someone close to you die? No, it's you? No? Yeah. Your cat died. See, it's correct. Someone close to me's cat died. The horoscope is correct. So I look for data that backs up my worldview, and that's confirmation bias. And you might say, I don't have that. You all have it. We all have it. And there's a whole bunch of other biases that we're going to get into. So you got to have a plan. You got to have a process. You don't just go out and talk to people, because if you go out and don't have a plan, you might have a fabulous person and you don't have a good script. You don't know what you want to get out of them. You don't have a good closing line to say, look, can I follow up with you? You don't have you haven't thought through this. You just burned up potentially the best one you had, and they don't give you any more leads. Have a plan, have a process, execute that process. Understand confirmation bias, selection bias, social acceptability bias, winner's bias, and the other ones. I describe all these in the book. And then understand, don't just go after, no, I don't care what you think. Just tell me, is this true? Understand their perceptions as well as the reality. We already talked about that with safety. And don't believe what they say all the time. Do not believe what people say all the time. They might believe it. That doesn't mean that it's true. Sports fantasy, I had one of this team that's sports fantasy, great one. And he came back and he said, you know, I've done all this research and I think we're going to give up on this idea of running a sports fantasy program site. I said, why is that? And he said, because I've done the research and people, you know, our demographic, psychographic, young men who are between 16 and 20, they only do 15 minutes a day. I'll be right back in 1 second. Only 50, do you know, was a question about fantasy sports?
No.
So do people know what fantasy sports is? It's like young men get on and they bet, they bet or they compete with their friends about picking people from different teams. And then there's an algorithm that says who's winning, and it's kind of this competition you can do. It's a game where you get input from the sports leagues. And so he said, well, I talked to them. They only spend 15 minutes a day on it. I said, I have 4 boys. I can guarantee you they don't spend 15 minutes a day on this. Go back and research this more. He said, no, they said 15. I said, go back and research it more. Watch, get a log, dig deeper. He came back and it's closer to 2 hours a day than they spent 15 minutes. They wanted to believe that it's 15 minutes, but that once they realized they did the whole, it's when they got up, the first thing they do, they look at their phones, they see what the other people have done overnight, and then when they go to breakfast, they're looking at the newspapers to see what numbers are coming in. They then go to work, and on the way to work, they're talking to their friends about it, emailing. They get there, and then they reload their team. And then at lunchtime, they spend another 15 minutes on it. And then at night, they spend probably another 30 minutes on it, you know? So, but this happens, like people don't want to think about how much they spend about it, so they'll tell you that. And that's just one example. You have to kind of study their behavior as well, not just what they say. Go to surveys too soon. So customer interviews are the most common one that we talk about, and I'm going to show you book that you can download to help you with that. And there's a lot in the workbook. Did you guys get the workbook? Did you get the white book? You got no books? Okay. The red book has, I will send it out to you. The red book, I have a whole chapter about how to do primary market research in that. You can do interviews, and we'll guide you through that, but you also observe what people do, right? Observe them doing their job. Don't just ask them what they're doing. Observe what's going on around them when you go into if they go into their office. See what other proxy products they have. See what books they have. See what pictures they have in their room. See what kind of clothes they wear. Find out what kind of car they drive. Car actually is a very interesting thing to understand. I mean, you can get some of this from just asking them. We had this one student could ask 15, 20 questions and then could tell you what type of car the person had with very high accuracy. Oh, I forgot, you had a question.
Yes, that if the confirmation bias can help you to build like your persona and anti-persona, like coming from your hypothesis.
So the confirmation bias, you've got to filter out the information. You've got to be very open to it. And how do you avoid confirmation bias? First of all, you know what it is, and you know we're all subject to it. And then when you do your interviews and write your scripts, do it with somebody else to help look at it over your shoulder and say, wait a second, you're engaging in confirmation bias right now. You know, you're asking them whether they like your product already, and we haven't gone qualitative soon enough. You know, you're making the assumption that this is important to them, and they haven't said that. The other thing is try to do the job yourself, and you'll understand more, And that could give you some great insights. And the other thing is you run tests on people. I'm going to come back to this with another book. Focus groups, do not do focus groups. I don't know any entrepreneur that seriously does focus groups. In big companies, they do them. They're very expensive. They take a long time, and they're subject to lots of groupthink and to decode them. I am not a fan of this, and I don't know any entrepreneur who is. User-driven innovation, this is what Eric von Hippel does. I think that's really worth understanding, but it's one tool. Where's my friend, my MBA friend? Here. Yes. Jobs to be done is another way to figure out how to decode what people are doing, and that's very good as well. So once you what we do is we have a pledge with our students that say, I am going to do it, and I am not going to be subject to confirmation bias and other biases, and I'm going to change my mind, and that's no sign of weakness. And I'm going to let the customer take me to where we need to go. And you don't need to do this, but we do this in our class at MIT, so that we reinforce with people, you have these biases, don't come back and just confirm what you already thought. Let the customer lead you to where the needs are. So this is, in this book, the workbook, there's a chapter on primary market research. I have that chapter electronically. If you remind me, I will get it to you tonight. I don't have the whole book, or I would give that to you, which is exactly why Wiley does not give that to me. They need to make money out of it. But I can send you that chapter, and I can send you the other 2 chapters I think I have as well. But this goes through, has worksheets and all kinds of other stuff to help you through it. And that will be it. These books you can download for free. This is by a friend, Frank Romlowski and Gif Constable. Talking to Humans talks about how do you interview people and goes through this. If you go to this, they'll try to make you buy it at the higher levels, but just keep going down the page, and then they'll say, if you're an educational institution, you can download the PDF for free, right? And the same thing with this book, Testing with Humans. Really good things for you to have and to have in your entrepreneurship library, and they're free. So, all right, so that's how we do primary market research. You're going to have a real challenge here, because you're going to have to figure out how do you get information in a very short time period. And you're not going to be able to go interview people and do user tests and things like that, because that'll take too long here. So what types of things would you do? Where would you go to get information? What did Erdin tell you? Did he tell you this morning? Yeah? But you're not going to be able to go to physical watering holes, so what would you do? Mm-hmm. What are virtual watering holes? Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, blogs, forums. Go out and post on those and say, hey, we're some students, we're looking into this, we're MIT students. That always works, by the way. We're MIT students, we're working on a class project, and we're looking for people who are interested in a solution that might do this, or we're interested in people who do this and trying to make their job better for them. And the key thing to good primary market research is go out there and try to find your first one. And when you find a good one, the last question of every primary market research is, if they're good, is who else should we speak to that's like you? Because you've been incredibly helpful. And if you've built up a rapport, hopefully they'll give you 4 or 5 more names, and now you're in. It's like finding gold. Once you find that vein, then you jump in there, and then you just keep going. Another key thing that I have in primary market research is anyone here been a journalist? Journalist?
I studied journalism.
You did?
I do.
You do now. So a good journalist is incredible at primary market research, because that's their job. They have to go find all this information out. And if you've ever been interviewed by a good journalist, it's amazing. Like, they come up and they're interviewing you. Like, what's your name? Nicole. So where's the chair? So Nicole and I have set up an interview. So we go, Nicole, how are you? I'm Bill. Fine. Good to see you, Nicole.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. So you're an expert in what? Again?
Software engineering.
Software engineering, yeah. So tell me, what makes you so successful at software engineering?
I build products, I build products and services with technology.
Service and technology. Wow. How do you do that?
Coding, taking to customers, see what they need.
See what they need. Yeah, yeah. So I'm not doing this particularly well right now because he's hard. But what you do is you make him feel like the most important person in the world. You're leaning forward, shaking your head and smiling. You're an incredibly empathetic listener. You're and he's feeling great. You're repeating what he says. You're non-judgmental you're not negative judgmental in any way, shape, or form. You're like, yes, that's fantastic. How do you do that? Like, tell me. And he's like, at the end of it, I don't know if anyone's ever been interviewed by a good journalist. You're like, at the end, you go, God, that person was so smart. You're like, why was the person so smart? Because they just agree with everything you say, right? They're just like, they're just pulling everything out. And they're like, oh, that person's so smart. They want to know everything about me, everything that I know. It's like, were they really? They're just pulling information out of you. And at the end of it, you're like, damn, I told them a lot. I mean, and that's what happens. I mean, if you ever watch some of these, there was this great one, I don't know if anybody ever saw it, of this person from Vice. And they got embedded with the Nazi guys in Charlottesville. And this person was not. Did anybody see this video? It was incredible. She's like just leaning forward, tell me about this. This is great, that's great. And you know that she completely disagrees with everything that he says. And he's just like, yeah. And he's just telling her all this stuff, which led to his total destruction. And it really, but he couldn't help himself because she was so enthusiastic. Now, I'm not saying your customers are Nazis, just to be clear. I'm just saying your job is to be non-judgmental and get as much information as you can. And you should use these journalistic techniques to just create enthusiasm and just pull it out. Just pull it out as fast as you can, as much as you can. It's best to do primary market research with two people. Because if I was doing this, and this was a little over the top because it's in front of a whole group and he's feeling nervous. But I can make him feel very enthusiastic, but I am not taking any notes because he's just looking at me. But while we're doing this, he's taking notes. He's watching everything. He's noticing what he responded well to and what he doesn't respond well to. He's noting that there. And I'm just like super positive the whole time. Endorphins are racing through my body. I'm trying to get him excited, you know. But he's the kind of person watching everything with a more dispassionate eye. He's checking out the pictures. He notices when he crosses his legs and uncrosses them and leans forward and leans back. But I am not like that. I am not like looking over his shoulder to see what pictures are there. I'm just like, oh yeah, baby, let's go. Getting everything I can. And that's why I say about journalism. They teach you that in journalism?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. It's a fabulous skill. It's a great skill. I mean, I'm so impressed by journalists because they go into a situation and they get everybody to tell them everything, and like very, very quickly, and then they write these articles. Yeah. Yes?
Is it okay to organize video interviews and then record the whole thing and analyze it afterwards?
So the answer is you would love to do that, but you have to get permission from them, and B, know that if you do that, you might not get the information you want because then it's on video. So there's this trade-off that you have to think about through that. And it's often much better you'd love to videotape the things. But often now, like if you say, hey, do you mind if I just record this? And you take your phone and you put it on the table, because people leave them on the table, and then you just ignore it until the end of the interview. And you just kind of act like it's not there. Don't make it highly visible. But the problem with video is, it's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You're going to change their behavior, and they're not going to give you as much information. But you would love to if you could. Yes?
I was going to say with the phone as well, I've done a lot of ones where you record it with the phone, and I'm asking people about their gut health, which is really personal, and they probably don't want to record it. But if you start talking about stuff that is just like, oh, how was your day? And like all of that,
Yeah.
just chatty stuff,
Yeah.
lead into
Yeah.
really personal detail, and that helps.
Completely. And the other thing is, I learned this trick, is you say something really kind of embarrassing about yourself, too, to them. And you build up this personal rapport, and you make yourself vulnerable. Like, oh my God, my girlfriend just dumped me the other day. It's like, now they're going to tell you everything. They're like, oh my God, this person's only threatening, you know, and he's done, you know. You can bring people, build their trust by showing your vulnerability, your humanity, your authenticity. Whereas if you just go in and go straight for the, you know, I'm here to test hypothesis, you know, you're not going to be nearly as successful. Yes? Montreal, you move from there to there. You're not, I don't like change, you know. We just teach that. We don't do it.
It has happened to me before when customers or people and customers are starting to disclose too sensitive information.
Yeah.
How do you deal with those situations?
If I think that, if
I
I,
don't know, like if do you like mention that the information is safe with you? It's in any way or something?
I don't know. You have to give me a specific. I would not mislead anybody. Yeah.
Not misleading, but
Yeah.
like in a sense of if I get for saying if I get too comfortable with you and starting to disclose like very personal things, are you responsible of telling me that, hey, I think you're disclosing too much information?
No. No. But I would protect the person. I wouldn't make them look bad. I mean, there's some things that you get very personal. If you're talking to someone about their gut and they have, you know, it's a diarrhea problem, you know, you got to hear that. Or you have other things that we have wellness things. You got to talk to those people, but you don't want to hurt them. I mean, you got to like your customers. If you don't like your customers, you should not do that. And you wouldn't, you know, oh good, well, I'm going to publish this on our website. Of course you wouldn't do that, right?
Do you use like any form like you're like on form like your
No.
information is protected by?
No, I don't. It's good judgment. I mean, look, we don't like forms necessarily, although I just showed you the other thing. All right, let me just jump to the other one, and I know there are a few more questions, but I'll answer those after I get this other one up because I want to keep moving so we have.